Star Wars 7x7, episode 1978. Today, it's a Resistance briefing. We're talking about the Voxx Vortex 5000. This is Season 2, Episode 9 of Star Wars Resistance. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So, I got to thinking about this particular episode of Star Wars Resistance in connection with a couple of the episodes of The Mandalorian and, pushing all the way back to when I used to watch The X-Files. And the X-Files episodes in general, I don't know if you happen to watch that show, but there were, some episodes that were just sort of the, weekly monster crazy weirdo of the week situation. And then there were the mythology episodes, which dealt with the whole, conspiracy theory around whether aliens actually were on Earth and the cigarette smoking man and the black oil and all that stuff. And yeah, all those cool episodes. And those were the episodes, those mythology episodes were the ones that I really enjoyed the most and always was just bored with the, Monster of the Week episodes. And, that wasn't a knock on them necessarily. I know a lot of people really liked those episodes. It was just for me, I was like, oh my gosh, just, tell me more of the conspiracy theory story because that's what I'm really into. So the fact that, we have episodes like, The Child, which was episode 2 of The Mandalorian, and Sanctuary, which was episode 4, where, they don't necessarily advance the, main part of the story so much. I mean, certainly Sanctuary did more comparatively than The Child did, but, they still provide some interesting information toward the larger story that we're being told, but we still have to, have these episodes. I mean, that's ultimately what TV is, basically, right? If it's a movie, it's going to be a lot more focused and a lot more to the point in that regard. Not to say that they don't have their pleasures, but, I do just kind of want more of the main story. And so that's what, got me thinking, or that was stuff that was in my head as I was watching the Voxx Vortex 5000, because this is another one of those stories that doesn't necessarily advance the First Order resistance, the, major, conflict in Star Wars part of the story, but it is, once you remove your brain from that and go, okay, TV doesn't have to do this all the time. They have to do other things too. And, when you set your brain straight on that, then, you get to enjoy it a lot more. So this episode, and this is a spoiler, filled episode of the show. So if you haven't seen this episode of Resistance, then save this podcast for a later date. But if you're okay with me talking about details, well, then, we'll talk about them. So the Aces are all cooped up and bored and fighting with each other just for their own amusement. The Colossus is low on everything again, surprise, surprise, and Hype Phazon gets the bright idea to go to Vronky's casino, where he actually cut his teeth in racing around the Voxx Vortex, which is an asteroid field. And he's like, hey, I can go there and race and make some money for us, and it'll get us out of here, and we won't be going crazy and tearing stuff up. And this seems like a bad idea in general anyway. I mean, yes, you need something to happen in a TV show, but having them come out in a very public way seems like not the greatest idea. But anyway, they go there and it turns out, and this is the, interesting part for the broader story, that there's barely anybody at Vronky's casino because of the war, because since the war broke out, it's been really scarce in there, and all the rich people went to Canto Bight, which is kind of fascinating in its own way. But Vronky, who is voiced by John DiMaggio, and John DiMaggio, among other glories, is the voice of Bender in Futurama. So yeah, as soon as I know John DiMaggio's in something, sign me up, basically. So as Vronky the Hutt, he says that he is not like other Hutts, and by all appearances he doesn't seem to be, but he certainly has a very strong cheating streak that is very Hutt-like, and manages to trick not only Hype Phazon, but then by successive measures, Freya Fenris, Griff Halloran, and Bo Keevil, all of them end up losing races to what turns out to be a droid racer going through an asteroid field that is filled with mines and laser cannon emplacements that weren't initially shown off, and laser cannon emplacements on the finish ring itself. I mean, it's a messed up situation, and ultimately they keep betting themselves deeper into trouble. And so now there are 4 aces that are basically indentured to Frankie the Hutt. And finally, they say, okay, well, we'll do a relay race instead with Tora and Kaz, and, we'll bet the Colossus, but you gotta, throw in 500,000 credits on your end. Meanwhile, Nico seems to think that all of the games in the casino are rigged. Surprise! But that they might be being controlled by the same droid core, and so figures out how to hack it and manages to do so and provide advice from time to time. But once the Kowakian monkey lizards on staff find out what's happening, they cause all sorts of chaos. And there are Kowakian apes in this episode too, which we saw in the previous season with one of the episodes where Poe and Kaz went on a separate mission. So that was kind of cool to see them come back. But of course, our heroes win the day naturally, so they get all their aces back and they get 500,000 credits to boot. And that's probably going to go, I don't know. We still don't know necessarily what the population of the Colossus is. It's probably, a lot larger than we've seen. So yeah, I don't know how far 500,000 credits are going to go, but it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. So that is basically the deal with the Voxx Vortex 5000 episode of Resistance. What's coming up on Resistance? Well, we'll talk about that after the break. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So, episode 10 of Star Wars Resistance, which comes out next week, is called Kaz's Curse, and it features the triumphant return of Steve Blum, who was the voice of Zeb in Star Wars Rebels. However, Zeb is not who is actually returning. Steve is, of course, an accomplished voice actor, and so he is going to be playing Leos, who is a pirate that curses Kaz. And Kaz is going to have to seek the help of Mika Gray to deal with this curse, which must mean that things are actually happening with this curse, so that's kind of weird. Mika Gray is, of course, the person that we saw in the Relic Raiders episode who was trying to collect and destroy Sith artifacts, so it's good to see her returning, and we'll see whether this is just a garden variety curse or if this actually has any bearing on the whole Rise of Skywalker story stuff. Don't know, we'll see. But for now, that is going to do it for this episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.